What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Monday edition of Back Your Play with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. Appreciate everyone checking us out on the YouTube channel at Rich Q on Q. And of course, powered from our good friends over at Lyold Media. And also our Monday from our very good friends at Played Again Sports. We already been telling you about everything going on with the holidays and the merchandise. If you mention it, you heard it right here on BYP with Q. You get 10% taken off your order, 10% added on to your purchase as well. So a lot of good stuff happened with our good friends over at Play It Again Sports. All right, our guy, our NFL insider, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football, now Monday at 8 p.m. on Broad Street South and 102.9 The Game. Lloyd Vance kind enough to join us on a Monday edition of BYP, where we are basically doing last rites for a couple of teams. But my friend, how are you?
Doing good. We're at the halfway point here, Q, and we're really understanding a lot who the contenders and pretenders are. But there were some really good games. Fun weekend to watch.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, when we were doing some of the picks and the plays, I mean, I wound up BYP wise going 4-1. The only loss, I thought the Dallas Cowboys could either won that game. I had them hedged money line, also cover the 3. And let's start with that game. Then we'll get into some of the injuries around the league as well, Giants and Daniel Jones. But listen, I feel as though this is the same conversation year after year with the Dallas Cowboys, right? When are they going to step up? When's it going to be the quarterback? When's it going to be the head coach? And with all that being said, Philadelphia Eagles did not play the most cleanest game, but they're 8-1. Good teams find a way to win. But if you go back to that last series, where for some inexplicable reason, the Eagles were trying to just gift wrap, hand that game over to the Dallas Cowboys. That was your shot. Mike McCarthy, Dak Prescott. Here's your signature moment on the road. National spotlight, mid-season, contentious, competitive, highly contested. We hate you, you hate us. Cowboys, Eagles, the rivalry. Here we go. They get the ball 1st and 5, because, by the way, Eagles were gifting them penalties as well. 1st and 5 at the 6 with 27 seconds to go. You get a false start. You back them up 1st and 5, 1st and 10, and then something that you cannot do if you are a veteran quarterback in this league. You cannot do if you're supposed to be an all-pro, a Pro Bowl quarterback. Something you cannot do if you're the leader of a franchise is take the friggin' sack. And that's exactly what Prescott does. Takes a sack, 11-yard sack. Clock is tick, 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 tick. I mean, that drive, right, my friend, that drive, they moved 86 yards in 46 seconds, 56 yards of Eagles penalties to get to 6, and then Sweat with the big sack, 11 yards, and then incomplete, and then throw it up there. CeeDee Lamb got to throw it in the end zone. He doesn't do that, and ultimately the Eagles hang on for a 28-23 win. But if you're the friggin' Dallas Cowboys, I mean, can we just get it out now? Prescott is not a winning quarterback. Then I got to go listen to talking heads sit there and say he rises to the moment in championship. I mean, what are you talking about? He's not a winning quarterback. Maybe wins and losses, yes. Maybe wins and losses, yes. But you stick him in a situation like that, and what happens? He spits the friggin' bit every time with the head coach. Talk to me.
Q, this was his best performance, in terms of they were in it to the end, and you can't really place the blame succinctly on him. Yes, that sack was very bad, and the Eagles played tough in key moments, and unfortunately for Dak, he stepped out of bounds on that two-point conversion, which was
Thank you for bringing
huge,
that up too. I forgot. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
yeah, and you got to tip your cap to Brandon Graham. He had back-to-back sacks in 2 key moments late in the 4th quarter, and then he ran him out of bounds there on that 2-point conversion. So that was huge. And then, Dallas, the review guys were not helping him. That almost touchdown to the tight end. They go for it on 4th down. Imagine if they just kicked the field goal there, but his knee was down. He didn't get in, and the Eagles, as you said, they're 8-1. But they're a flawed 8-1. They continue to put these W's together, and the road seems to go through Philadelphia. We know they're going to have a tough stretch coming up where they have to play the Chiefs and the Niners. So we'll kind of see. But right now, they're the leaders in the clubhouse in terms of they're the cream of the NFC, and this is a quality home win for them. Was not pretty. You saw Jalen Hurts have that grit that everybody talks about, the
Yeah,
leadership
no
ability,
doubt.
kind of like what you were just driving out with Dak Prescott, that he just does not do. He willed his team to victory, Jalen Hurts, and it just showed over and over again in this game.
Yeah, two good points you mentioned. Stepping out of bounds with the right foot, um, you convert to two. I mean, he's got to know better. He's got to understand wherewithal, where I'm at on the field. That makes it 28-25, where field goal ties it up. Plenty of time to go for the win. And then that fourth down call, whether we sit there and say he got in or he didn't, can we talk about how the tight end was mugged on a play? I mean, listen, it's just commonplace how bad the officiating is. We saw it last night and Sunday night with Cincinnati and Buffalo. We saw the horrible roughing the penalty call in New England and Washington. We saw it again yesterday with some really bad penalties. I mean, this is eye-opening. Both teams were flagged 10 times, right? And the last Eagles home game, they weren't flagged once against Miami Dolphins. So everything is bang, bang, right? There's New York in one of these, in the officiating crew's ears. All right, if you think it's, roughing the passer, throw the flag. You have to protect the quarterback, throw it. And then New York telling them, throw it. Knee-jerk reaction is thrown. You can't review it. Dallas shot themselves in the foot, yes. But that's a game where, again, if you go back and you look at it, and if you're an Eagles fan, Dallas was answering the bell. They were taking some of the shots by the Philadelphia Eagles. And I thought, especially when this was a 7-7 game, and then the Eagles scored, and then Dallas comes back, and then, you're trading things here and there, and then it's 17-14. I thought the momentum was swinging back into their favor going into the locker room. But the Eagles, this is what they do. They come out in that second half and they put together that drive, and then they score, and it gets the juice back going in that stadium and in that crowd. And that was a really impressive drive. You forced the punt from Dallas, and then you get the ball back again, and then they go right down the field, I think 11 plays, 80-something odd yards, and they punch it in. That's the mark of a really, really good team. Listen, these teams might see each other down the road come playoff time. You're not always going to play a clean game, but 8-1, you really can't find too much fault in it. Goddard goes out with the fractured forearm. He might be an IR candidate. Stahl's going to be the backup. You mentioned Jalen Hurts. How concerned are you with that knee? Because he was taking a couple of shots, and then again, he's just a really tough, competitive quarterback. I mean, and he says all the right stuff afterwards. I don't want to let the city down, the team down, the fans down. This kid gets it, man. That's what you want in a friggin' natural born leader. I mean, honestly, but how are you concerned with Jalen Hurts? And I mean, listen, he's a couple hits away now from missing some time, especially if that knee's banged up.
Yeah, Q. And the Eagles were 3 for 3 in the red zone. That was huge, what you were talking about. They kept those long drives going, and they punched it in for touchdowns. And that's what really matters most in these types of situations. And did one other thing on the game before I get to Hurts. The Eagles had those 3 fumbles, and they didn't lose one of them. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Particularly that one.
last play.
That
Yeah,
last one was
last
Sweat,
series.
and then that rookie lineman jumps on it. That saved their
Gratuitous.
bacon. But when you talk about Hurts, that leg was bent back in an awkward position, and you knew he had a brace on it going into there because he was kind of beat up. But he just toughed it out. He's one of those guys. Let me rub some dirt on it and keep going. But as you said, Q, you start to wonder. You worry about him becoming a Cam Newton, becoming a Steve McNair, who was probably one of the ultimate leaders, playing with injuries. And you saw at the end of his career, he just couldn't do it anymore. So, you do worry about him taking those hits. And he was sacked in the game. I think he was sacked 4 times. No, 2 times he was sacked in the game. And it's a situation where, you know, these things accumulate, and you wonder, okay, if he can't get to the finish line, this team's done. Because I saw Mariota in the preseason. I talked about that game that I attended, and he's just a guy. He's done in his career. Yet, yes, he can do some RPOs and hand the football, but he's not going to make. He's no defense is going to fear him. You know what I mean? So they need to keep Hurts healthy. They did get Dickerson back. The offensive line did a nice job in terms of they did control the pace of the game. The Eagles held the ball for 30 minutes or so, and but yes, those hits accumulate, and you wonder, is he going to be able to make it to the end, which is a big thing.
Yeah, ground game wasn't really going. It was more that, gritty game. I thought in the trenches would decide it, and obviously we saw what a couple of those late sacks. But if you're the Cowboys now, Prescott put up the gaudy numbers. He was sacked 5 times. They didn't run for 100 yards. I think they finished with 73. He was averaging about 8.5 per pass play. You got to go to CD late in that game, obviously. I mean, his numbers were staggering. I mean, he finishes with 11 catches for almost 200 yards receiving. I mean, he was cooking all game long. It's just the Dallas Cowboys they're not on the level of the Eagles. And even if they would have figured out a way to miraculously win that game, my thought process and my opinion on Dallas would not change today, because the Eagles were giving them that game. They were gift wrapping the game. I mean, you're punching above your weight class. And now you look at Detroit, if you look at San Francisco, I've never been a believer in Prescott. It's because, you got the star and all of a sudden it's a different animal. Here we go. But again, you have to win that game. Like you're at the 6-yard line with 27 seconds. You have plenty of time. At least 4 plays, plenty of time. You have to figure out a way to get the ball in the friggin' end zone. You have to. And they couldn't get it done. And I'm sorry. You look at the numbers and you say, yeah, well, he relatively played well, but he made 2 egregious mistakes. He took the sack and then he failed to convert on the 2-point conversion. And then he doesn't even throw it in the end zone, the last play of the game, to give the wide receiver, to give Lamb an opportunity. So he's not a winning quarterback. He's not.
Well, he's not the guy you want in huge situations. I will agree with that. He's a regular season monster, and he's a lot like the guy who replaced Tony Romo. He's going to put up those stats and everything, but when it comes to the end and the game is on the line, you don't, especially on the road. Don't forget, he's a different guy in Dallas. He's 3-0 there right now. They're 2-3 on the road, and he just plays differently. The team, he can't rally them, and they remind me a lot of what the Dolphins are. They're a team that feasts on inferior opposition.
100%.
And Chew, we're going to see this in the next couple of weeks. They have the Giants, they're at Carolina, they have Washington, Seattle, then they play Philly and Dallas, and they're at Buffalo, at Miami. So we're going to see them kind of at the end of the season. Are they for real? But I think they're going to string some easy wins together here, and then people are going to start talking again, and Cowboys are going to puff their chest out when they play the Eagles again and see if they can beat them in the Jerry Dome. But I do agree with you that in key situations, he comes up short, and we've seen that in playoffs over and over again, particularly against the Niners. So, Dak, yes, he hung in there, and there are no more victories in the National Football League. It's still an L, and they have to figure out a way to move on now. The Eagles, they get their bye. They're going to try to get healthy. As you said, Dallas Goedert's banged up with the wrist. That's broken, and we'll see if he's able to put a cast on it or how that goes. And then the Kobe Dean was a little banged up in this game as well. So you talked about the Eagles. They're very vulnerable, as I talked about over and over again. Over that middle, I mean, Ferguson was eaten in this game.
Yeah.
He had so many catches in this game. That's the tight end for Dallas. And then the safeties as well. Blankenship, he goes out there and he battles. He
Yeah.
made that nice tackle, but he's not a coverage guy either. And Byard's still learning to play within the Eagles system. He had a bad penalty as well, as you were saying, some mistakes. Yeah, second man in on that unnecessary roughness.
That's right.
And then you talk about Hassan Reddick, that he turned it up a notch as well, but he had that bad penalty as well where he pushed Dak in the back, and that was huge in that drive you were talking about to end the game.
Yeah, and listen, you have to clean up the penalties. It's going to happen, but ultimately, very good teams find ways to win games like that, even though they almost gift wrapped it. With you gift wrap it, it could have been a crippling loss just from the mindset of you gave a game away and you basically had the NFC East right now. Pretty much, it's taken care of. Yeah, Washington got the win. The Giants yesterday, got to mention the Giants for a moment. Daniel Jones, torn right ACL knee. His season is done as soon as it happened. He falls down the first time trying to elude Crosby. Second time, boom, $160 million, 40 guaranteed. I feel for the kid. I do. Money-wise, he'll be fine, but I feel for him. And, I was never the biggest Daniel Jones supporter, but he did win a lot of games last year, tough road games, softer schedule, went on the road to win in the playoffs. The Giants season was lost that first series against the Dallas Cowboys after the false start and then the botched snap and then the blocked field goal run back for a touchdown. Their season essentially ended 6 minutes in, which is crazy to think about it. But now, if you're the Giants, you're in a real precarious position because it's very easy to speculate. See, everyone wants to jump off the ledge right now and sit there and say, fire the head coach and fire the GM. That's just asinine. You're not going to do it. It's a knee-jerk reaction. They lost to an interim head coach in Pierce. They lost to a rookie quarterback yesterday in Vegas. They got their doors waxed. The kid DeVito, he's not an NFL starter, but he's trying. I get it. It'll either be him or Barkley going forward until Taylor comes back. But everything now, smoke and mirror speculation of if they finish 2-15, if they finish 3-14. Like, I can play both sides of it. All right, here you go. So I got the one devil on my shoulder sitting there saying, tank it, lose 13, 14 games, and go after some of these quarterbacks. Then I got the angel here to say, wait a second, what's the point of bringing in a quarterback and drafting one if you can't fix that offensive line? So at this point, Daniel Jones will be a Giant heading in the next season. You have to just look at the cap hit and the money and the reality. It doesn't necessarily mean he's going to take a snap for them, but I find it interesting that 2 years and now they can get out of this deal with him after next year. It's just horrible, man. I mean, it's painful to watch. I got to be honest, I had to turn the game off. I just couldn't take it anymore. There was really nothing to watch at that point once he goes down. And I feel bad for him, but he's just an injury-prone quarterback. And the one thing you can't say about Eli, Eli was tough, and Eli never missed games. And it's just unfortunate this kid, the neck injury, and now the ACL, which was confirmed earlier today by the Giants. So it's it's bad.
It was a tough watch, and you feel good for the Raiders fans and I thought they would get that jump having the interim coach. We talked about that on Friday. So sometimes when a team gets that interim guy in there, he gives them that push, and everything's new for this team. And the Giants did have some fight early on in this game, but as you said, once Daniel Jones gets hurt, all the air comes out of the balloon, and the team just kind of fell apart. And DeVito, as we said, he's trying his best, but he's a guy out there. He shouldn't be taking NFL snaps. These defenses are coming after him, and he just doesn't have the tools to beat them. So Barkley was out there trying to do his thing as well. That's Saquon Barkley. He was running the football, a little effectiveness early in the game. But Q, it is going to be a huge question going into this offseason for this Giants team. If they finish where we think they are, they're 2-7. You finish in that 4 wins or less lane, we'll say, they have to think about Caleb Williams, who's the USC quarterback, or Drake May, who is the quarterback down at UNC. Both those kids are exciting. And, they'd have to figure out a way to move the money around, as you said, or just have the kid sit, or the kid play until Daniel Jones is ready, and then kind of see from there. Obviously, getting hurt this time of year, he's probably not going to be ready for training camp. A lot of interesting decisions there for Joe Schoen. I do think that Brian Daboll will be back. I don't see him as a coach of the year than done type candidate. I think the GM and the coach will be back, and this Giants team will reload. But they could take the offensive tackle from Penn State, and there's a couple other ones out there. But Q, how many times are they going to try to fix this offensive line?
I can't answer that.
They got Neal back this week. Neal was out there playing, and he's playing well for them. And they have Thomas, who we know who's kind of an underachiever. They drafted him high.
Yeah, but just go over the last 10 years. Flowers, Hernandez, it's always makeshift. And then this team always deals with injuries. Jones with the neck, Saquon with the ankle, Waller with the hamstring, Thomas with the hamstring, John Michael Schmidt with the shoulder injury, now Jones with the torn ACL. They're a losing franchise over the last 20. I mean, honestly, if it's not for a brief flicker, a couple championships here and there, since 2011, they made the playoffs in 2016, which was smoke and mirrors, soft schedule again. and their defense that year, where Collins was like an all-pro. After that, they decided, I still believe where everything went wrong is when they felt they can squeeze another couple years out of Eli based on the film 15 and 16, and then Gettleman and Shermer, and we tried to build around him, and it just fell by the wayside. So then you draft Daniel Jones, you inexplicably take a quarterback number 2 in Saquon Barkley, which you never draft a quarterback in the top 5. It's unheard of. Even though he's got top 5 talent, he's also always hurt and banged up. You watch games with Saquon, every time he has a 7-yard run, he's waving at his sideline. He wants to come out again. So it's just, John Mara has to understand that if you want to be successful, and they have been successful as a franchise, no doubt, but the loyalty, it ends, man. You need to make business decisions. And Shane and Brian Daboll right now, they're not tied to Daniel Jones. I mean, did they have input after last year when they went on the road and beat Minnesota? Hey, they win that game. He's outstanding. So it was just inevitable they were going to pay him. We're caught up in the dollars and cents, right? But the business move was, yes, sign him. Give him that contract extension. Give him that deal if they're not picking up the option. But it's very easy now to look in hindsight where, are you building the team from the inside out or the outside in? It boggles my mind how they cannot figure out the offensive line, whether it's scouting, whether it's the GMs that have passed through, the Reeses, the Gettleman, and now Shane. It's bad, man. And
the key thing, Q, is we've seen this over and over around the league. If you don't have a good young quarterback that you can build around, you're done. So they might as well, if they have the opportunity to take one of these 2 young guys, get them and then try to rebuild around him. Because Daniel Jones, I've always been very skeptical of him, but last year he put it together.
He did.
It was that money year. It's crazy how this happens. You see guys do this all the time throughout sports. They know they're going to get a contract,
and
so
good
they
for
have
him.
the big year before they sign, and that's what he got. And they paid him. Now they also, the key thing is they gave Saquon Barkley that 1-year deal. They're definitely going to let him walk. I think that whole franchise tag on him or Daniel Jones type of thing that kind of tied the Giants' hands, and they decided, okay, we'll give Jones a big contract, but. It was a bad business decision, and now the Maras got to say, okay, we made a mistake. Because as you said, the coach and the GM are fairly new. They've only gotten there the last couple of years. Let them build their team in their image, and that Daboll wants a quarterback who kind of is like Josh Allen, because that was his calling card guy.
Yep.
Daniel Jones is not Josh Allen. He can move and run the football and everything, but these injuries are starting to pile up for him. And then that's a lot of money guaranteed that you talked about earlier. It's a tough situation. And they're in the basement of the NFC East, very competitive division. And teams are going to put some lumps on them now, especially if they're starting DeVito or Matt Barkley, who you're talking about earlier. It's going to get ugly quick.
Wake me in the spring. You could have drafted Josh Allen too. I mean, wake me in the friggin' spring. I don't need to see this nonsense. I don't. And as much as I'm a diehard Giants fan, it's bad football, and it's been bad football for the past 10 plus years. I mean, they're feast or famine. They get in the playoffs, they go on the road. They beat Minnesota on the road, so you're paying the kid. Then they were non-competitive against the Eagles, and then to open up the season, they got their doors blown in by the Dallas Cowboys. So, yeah, I think, like you said, Edelman, I think, came back after 9 months. Let's just say, again, it's purely speculation right now in November, but if Jones comes back July, August, and you drafted a quarterback, then maybe you try to trade. I don't know. He'll be on the roster. Like I said, you have to look at the numbers and how to manipulate the numbers, but it just looks like it's just a really bad lost season. By the way, Monday edition of Back Your Play with Q. Rich Quinones here. Lloyd Vance joining us, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on Broad Street South 102.9. Hear him every Monday live at 8 p.m. and, of course, multiple times during the week with BYP. Got to remind you, we're presented by our wonderful friends over at BetterHelp. And let me take a moment to tell everyone out there about this amazing partnership with Back Your Play. Listen, life can be very overwhelming. Work, family, pursuing your passion. Trust me, I know. And you know what? The holidays are right around the corner too, so it doesn't get any easier. Sometimes you might feel overwhelmed. You just might need someone to talk with too. So you know what you do? You got to back your play when it comes to taking care of yourself and your mental health and your well-being. If you're thinking about starting therapy, then please give BetterHelp a try. Flexible with online sessions, and they'll work around your schedule as well. All you have to do is go to betterhelp.com/RichQ to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/RichQ. All right. So you mentioned Miami before. I mean, are we looking at the Dolphins now as a flat out fraudulent team? Because every time they step up in weight class, they get their teeth kicked in. And I told you this, I think with the Miami Dolphins, if you slow the game down, if you make them have to grind out a win, they're not capable of doing it. When they're slinging it all over the backyard, they'll put up their points and they'll win some games. But yesterday, call it the travel, call it the venue, call it Germany, call it the time difference, the lapse. They fall behind 21-0 quickly. They come back. They have an opportunity to tie it late, and then they get a couple of those miscues late by two as well. So where are you with the Miami Dolphins right now?
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Q, that this is a team that there's an old paper champion that we always talk about. They can beat a tomato can, they've never all the teams they've beaten have a losing record. And every time they step up in class, whether it was the Eagles, whether it was KC, they just kind of fold and they're not a physical team, as you were saying. Yeah, Mostert has had some big runs kind of late and everything, but throughout the game, they were not moving the line of scrimmage. And it's surprising because Kansas City, Spagnuolo's defense was always bend but don't break, but they were doing a nice job of Chris Jones and Gay and the rest of those guys in terms of getting pressure on Tua, hitting him early and often, and then he made some mistakes, particularly that interception that was lateraled and returned to the house. So, nondescript game, as you said, it may have been a travel or something over there to Germany. It was early in the morning on the fallback day. But this team, they got it done. In Kansas City, much like the Eagles, yes, there's no style points. They're 7-2 now. They lead the AFC. They look like they're going to run away with the division. We're going to see what the Chargers do tonight, but they look like they're going to run away with the division, and they have a good chance of being that number one seed. We'll see if they're able to hold on to it. But Kansas City and Pat Mahomes, they did just enough to get it done. He was 20 of 30, 185 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Neither quarterback threw for 200 yards. So that kind of just shows you the offensive, lack of it in this game. So it was a good win for KC. Now they rest and they move on from there. But I do agree with you that the Dolphins are a team that they'll probably win their division because there's not much behind them. But once they get to the playoffs, they're not built to win in the playoffs, in my opinion.
Yeah, and listen, Kansas City, that offense has looked somewhat broken, but again, very good teams figure out a way to get the W. Listen, last night, I told you once Cincinnati starts to get on track here, I mean, they kind of pounded Buffalo in the mouth when you think about it. I mean, Burrow all of a sudden, maybe a sleepy little pick here for MVP. The numbers were ridiculously gaudy. I think close to 350, but they beat the Bills 24-18. And if you really look at that game, what stands out for me again is, Josh Allen with the turnovers. Again, he was only sacked one time. The offensive line did what they needed to do, but it's just a sloppy game. And, Cincinnati, you watch Cincinnati, right? So after it's kind of back and forth and Cincinnati's up 14-17, they exchange punts, but then they get the pick and then boom, they turn around and they eventually 2 possessions later score. It's a well-coached team. They don't make a lot of mistakes. The quarterback's playing at such a high level. I know Cincinnati's going to be okay. I'm more concerned about Buffalo right now at 5-4, because now all of a sudden that AFC East, the Jets perhaps get a win tonight against the Chargers. We saw Miami already lose. Buffalo lost. That NFC is getting a little more interesting now.
Yeah, Q, and you can't forget that if the playoffs start today, the AFC North would have 3 teams in the
As I
playoffs.
told
They would
you.
have all the wild card spots. I've been thinking about you a lot watching these games because Cincinnati has turned it on, and then you got the Lions who are on a bye this week. They're 6-2. Now, their Super Bowl prediction may come to
This
fruition.
is
We'll
why you
see.
must back your play. That's what I'm telling people.
But when you look at this game for both sides, I do agree with you that the Bengals are getting extremely hot, and they're a physical team. Mixon is running the football, and that's allowing the play action at Burrow to throw the football down the field. Don't forget, he has all those weapons, Higgins and Jamar Chase, and
Yep.
even they're even getting their tight ends involved. He's spreading the football around. And their defense is very underrated with Hubbard and Hendrickson getting heat on the quarterback. And as you said, on the other side, the Bills, Josh Allen leads the NFL in interceptions right now at this point, and he's also their leading rusher. They still cannot get the running game going with Cook. He's enough. We talk about disappointing draft picks. He's a guy comes. They got him, and Cook is not a feature back in the NFL. I know they signed Leonard Fournette,
Yep.
but I don't know how much he has left. I don't even know if he's suited up for the game. And right now you have to say, okay, the Bills' window has it closed. So many years they were so close, and Sean McDermott was a good up and coming head coach, and this roster was young. Now these guys, the core of their team, guys like Micah Hyde, they're in their early 30s, and you wonder, okay, how much left does that group have at an elite level? So, yes, you do have to worry about the Bills, and they have a lot of work to do.
So you look at the AFC right now, Kansas City 7-2, Baltimore, that was one of our other picks.
Yeah.
On Friday, they just train wrecked Seattle right now. And I look at Baltimore. If you can start running the football as consistent as we saw yesterday with this team, and it opens up the playbook for Lamar Jackson, and Beckham finally got into the end zone. Look, they've got a game coming up against Cleveland, which is going to be a hell of a game in about 8 or 9 days against Cleveland. I'm sorry, that's actually this Sunday, pardon me. And that you got a defensive affair versus that offense. And they got Cincinnati and the Chargers. Let's just say they win 2 out of 3 and they get to, 9-3, or hell, they win all 3 of them. Now all of a sudden they're 10-2. That'll be 1, 2, 3. That'll be a 7-game winning streak going into the bye, where they have the Rams, Jacksonville, San Francisco, Miami, and Pittsburgh, where they probably have another 3 or so winnable games. They're going to win their 12-13, and a lot of people were looking at their win total of 10, 11. We're going to steer clear of it. But I feel as though Baltimore right now is clearly the most balanced and best team in the AFC. It's not Kansas City.
They're a physical bunch, and they lead the NFL. They're either 1 or 2 in defense. It's between them and the Cleveland Browns, who are in their same division. But when you look at Baltimore, they're going to probably win that tough black and blue division. And as you said, they had this kid Mitchell running the football yesterday. He was running football up down the field, and then Gus Edwards running the ball at the goal line, and they're taking the pressure off Lamar Jackson. He did run for 60-some yards in this game, but you don't feel like he's got to put the Superman cape on like he used to. And this is a dangerous team because he protects the football, and then he plays so well in Baltimore. His record there, I think he's only lost like 3 times in his career as a starter at home. So, he's going to play very tough there. And if the road goes through Baltimore, they're going to be a tough out. And then we always talk about that defense. They have Jadeveon Clowney. He's come back into the picture. He is a dominant player for them. Kyle Van Noy, a guy we thought was done after he was playing with the Patriots. He was everywhere. He had 2 sacks, had a huge strip sack, and they recovered the fumble in this game. And Baltimore is a team you definitely have to keep your eye on, and they are stacked of W's.
Yeah, AFC is starting to get a little top heavy and congested as well. Monday edition of Back Your Play with Q. Rich Quinones here. Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us. We are presented by our wonderful friends over at BetterHelp. And again, let me take a moment and tell everyone about this amazing partnership on BYP. We know that life can be so overwhelming, work, family, pursuing passions. Trust me, I know. Yeah, the holidays are right around the corner, and sometimes you might feel overwhelmed. You might need someone to talk to and with. You know what? Back your play when it comes to taking care of yourself and your mental well-being. If you're thinking about starting therapy, then please give BetterHelp a try. Flexible with online sessions, and they'll work around your schedule. Make it happen. All you have to do is go to betterhelp.com/RichQ to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/RichQ to get 10% off your first month. AFC, as you mentioned, stacked. Then you got the NFC. Can we talk for a moment about Houston, though? Because I text you yesterday. I'm like, man, CJ Stroud can play. And then I blinked, and then he has that game-winning touchdown toss. Wow. I knew the kid was good. I didn't think the kid was going to be special, but now the kid has clearly shown you he's a franchise quarterback, and that is a great job. I feel as though what's lost in the sauce here is the head coach, DeMeco Ryans, because this team is winning games. I think a lot of people thought they would maybe win 3 or 4. I think the win total was set at 4. And if you look at this team right now, they're probably going to win 6, 7. Hell, they can win maybe 8 games with this kid under center. How about the job that Ryans is doing? And how about the Texans? I mean, and by the way, they lost a kicker too. So
Yeah, the running back came in there, man.
yeah,
Good job. Dare. I'm not gonna try and pronounce his last name, but Dare I'll call him. He did a great job stepping in there. He said soccer is his first love, and
there you
he
go.
made that big field goal. He had some good kickoffs, and everybody had to pitch in. And when you talk about this team, they're being built in the image of DeMeco Ryans. He's a guy who comes from that Niner system, and I remember talking to him when he was a player at the Eagles. He's just a leadership type of guy, and he's got this team turned around, and they're 4-4. They're in the mix for that wild card spot. We'll see. We'll see how they end up. But you know, CJ Stroud, I do agree with you. I was watching Combine, and the throws he was making there, I said, "Oh, this kid's got some ability," but I had no idea he could bring to the table what he has. He sets an NFL record in terms of over four. I think it was 470 yards he passed for. That's a rookie record, and then he had 5 touchdowns in this game, and just had no fear. They were down late, and he knew he had to get the touchdown, and he drove his team. I don't even know how far it was, like 60 yards or so, in a matter of seconds, and then throws a game winner to have them win 39-37. And we talked about earlier with the Giants, you got to have that young quarterback, and the Texans got to be saying, you know what? Oh my goodness, we got our guy. And they're able to build around him. And you have to feel good for that franchise, because we talked about the mess that Deshaun Watson had become, and his team was so downtrodden. Now they have
Yeah.
Stroud, and they have hope with him and Ryans and the rest of those young players on that team.
Yeah, good point with Stroud, right? We always talk about the game being so fast for a rookie, but yet you watch him, kid's thrown 14 touchdown passes, and he's turned the ball over once. He's just got 1 pick, 1 interception. So I just, man, I'll tell you, and the offensive line has done a really nice job. He's only been sacked 18 times. So he's getting more comfortable in the pocket. And I know they got some tough games coming up. I think Cincinnati and Jacksonville, maybe they come back down to life a little bit. But, right now you look at Campbell, you look at Ryans, even Sirianni, coach of the year in the NFL. I want to ask you, as we let's get into the Jets and Chargers, and then we'll get into game balls and lackey, because I think I'm going to nail your game ball, and I'm going to be disappointed. I was going to text you and tell you that there should be, under no circumstances, anyone else but this guy, but we'll get into it in a moment. How about the Jets and the Chargers tonight? This is a big game for both teams. I just think the Chargers offense will do just enough against the Jets to win this game tonight. But that's just my thought, my take on it. I think the line right now is 3.5. Chargers on the road laying 3.5. The Jets, again, listen, they got bailed out against Buffalo. They got bailed out against the Giants. I know they got a little juice and everyone's getting all giddy and high. And here we go, 4-3, coming off, a bye. They got an opportunity to do some damage here. And listen, the Giant win was off the bye, but they won 3 in a row. They beat Denver. They beat the Eagles. They beat the Giants. I kind of think it comes back down to reality tonight, where the Chargers are going to turn over Zach Wilson a couple times. I'm not a Zach Wilson fan at all. They're going to have to run the ball with Hall. They're going to have to keep it on the ground and not take a lot of shots. But I just like the Chargers offense, even though the Jets have a very good defense. I just think the Chargers offense will do enough to win this game tonight.
It's going to be a fun one to watch, Q, because you have the Chargers are very desperate, and they're trying to. They're at 3-4, I believe, right now. They're trying to get back in the race, and Herbert's got to prove that he can win on the road, and Austin Eckler, is he physical enough? And those are a couple things when I look at the Jets, they are, the Jets are going to try to run the football down their
Yeah.
throat with Breece Hall, and maybe they'll finally get Cook involved. We'll see, but Wilson's got to limit his mistakes, as you said, and the Chargers are a defense where you can move the football on them. So I'm going to go the other way. I think the Jets are going to pull a surprise at home, and you got a team coming from the West coming east. It's a night game. It's going to be cold out there. And you got the Jets team who's kind of fired up. As you said, their record, were they 4-3 or 5-3 right now?
Jets are 4-3, Chargers are 3-4.
So if they get to 5-3, these Jets, as bad as they are, and we talk about it over and over again, they feel like they could be in the mix in terms of playoffs. So I think, Saleh's going to have them ready to go. And he's another coach fighting for his job. So I think the Jets pull an upset here. Probably I'll go with 20-17. They get it done.
I think Robert Saleh gets a little bit of a pass because of Rodgers going down, right? And they're playing hard. That's the one thing. I mean, think about it. Last year, you could have made the argument they were 7-4. They lost to Minnesota. They lost to Detroit. There was the Buffalo stuff. They had those tight games. Mark of good teams also trying to win those tight games. So tonight, definitely Monday Night Football has major playoff implications in the AFC. And I think it's a string of 3 or 4 games that the Jets have AFC opponents, as well as, before them seeing the Giants before with the NFC. But the Chargers, again, your guess is as good as mine with the head coach on certain, when we talk about analytics and going for it here and there. I mean, it's just crazy watching the NFL now. 4th and 9 on your 30. Let's go for it. 4th and 4. Years ago it was always punt it away and play defense, but now it's just the analytics. 4th and short, 3rd and short. You have to go for it. All right, let's get into game ball. Now, let me throw to you my guy who, without a doubt, and I haven't even checked social, there should be no questions, he gets a game ball, and that is Mr. Dobbs in Minnesota. How do you not give him a game ball?
Wow. Ooh. That's a tough one, Q. When Hall goes down with that concussion, everybody's like, they're done. And he comes out there. What was he there? He got there on Halloween. He only been there like 4 or 5 days. And
calling audibles,
I didn't know he had
off,
the escapability. Oh, his escapability was incredible. And the way he got out of pockets when he needed to and ran down the field was great. Awesome job on him, Q. But I couldn't give him the game ball. I had to give it to the rookie of the year, CJ Stroud.
I figured you were.
We talked about him earlier, 30 of 42, 470 yards, 5 TDs, no interceptions, and then he had that NFL record, as we said, with the yardage there for a rookie. So, no rookies playing at the level we've seen with him. So I had to give him the game ball. There's always so many deserving players out there, but I had to give it to the kid.
That's horrible. By the way, looks like some baseball stuff. Craig Counsell is leaving Milwaukee to manage the Cubs. And it also looks like the Mets might have found their new manager, according to multiple reports coming out of the New York Post, hiring longtime Yankees coach Carlos Mendoza. So, all right. Yeah, I'm going to have to actually disagree with you on that. I mean, it's your game balls. I get it. I'm fine with that. But you got, this is a journeyman quarterback, man. And he got a couple days to get acclimated to hand signals, to check off the audibles, running, making plays, throwing, darts. I thought it was great on X when they showed the video. I mean, he just seems like a really likable guy, and just a persistence and the perseverance and just the resiliency. And that's a team vying for a playoff spot right now. So it might be, for the first time in history, we disagree. I mean, if you give the lackey to the poor kid DeVito, what's that, like 2 weeks in a row? You can't give it to him.
I didn't give it to DeVito last week. It to, as Mickey said, I gave it to some other ball.
Yeah, that's right. Lackey, let me see. You didn't give it to Dallas or Prescott or McCarthy. I don't think you gave it to Allen and Buffalo. I need a lifeline. I'm gonna need a hit on this one.
It's a quarterback. It definitely is a quarterback.
It is a quarterback.
Who did not get the job done?
Who did not get the job done? Not Prescott, not Allen. Did you give it to Gino?
That's a good guess, but no. I had to suffer through watching this game, Q, because I'm in a survivor pool thing, and I picked the Saints to get a win this week, and the Saints kept trying to give this game to the Bears, but their rookie quarterback Tyson Bagent, who is my lackey this week, he was terrible. 18 to 30,
Yeah, he didn't play
220
well.
yards. He
The
did have two
picks.
TDs, three interceptions, and he had a huge fumble at the game end of the game
Yeah.
where his team was trying to tie it. The Saints win 24-17, but you know, the Saints really they this was a tough win for them in terms of that they tried to give everything to the Bears, and they were losing or tied in quite a bit of this game. The Saints were.
And you know it stinks. So the website Tankathon, I love it, tankathon.com. Arizona's 1-8. Carolina, by virtue of the Chicago swap, is 1-7. They've got the second pick. The Bears have the third pick. Actually, the Bears have the second and the third pick. Pardon me, I misspoke. So no. Carolina has the pick. They're 1-7. So they're the number 2 team right now. They would pick second.
Well,
overall.
Carolina traded that. They traded
Correct.
it for Young.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. The Bears are at number 3. The Giants are number 4, and the Pats are number 5. The Rams are number 6. The Rams probably need a quarterback. New England needs a quarterback. The Giants will look for a quarterback. Arizona with Murray, who knows what the hell they're going to do? And then they got the other kid that they seem high on. Carolina's got a quarterback that they think is going to be a franchise quarterback. Haven't really seen it yet. And then Chicago with Fields. My fear is that the last game of the season, the Philadelphia Eagles have nothing to play for. And the Giants want to end it on a good note. And they win the game and screw themselves with draft capital and their draft spot. Because right now, they're probably going to roll into a win. They might beat New England. They might get another win. But I'm just trying to reconcile this in my head right now that no one's taken on Kyle Murray's contract. I think he's dead man walking in Arizona. Carolina's got a quarterback. Chicago, to me, scares me a little bit, but that's why I think you have the potential of a couple of these quarterbacks coming up. And I wanted to ask you this, and I know it's purely speculation again. I think Caleb Williams is a great quarterback, but and I have to be careful how I say this. When you lose a game and you go into the stands and you sob and you let me finish.
You don't like that, huh?
Well, because you know where I'm going with this. You lose the game and then you have these comments, you're gonna go home and watch Netflix or hug somebody. I mean, hey man, that's your right as a human. Okay, fine. You're in the stands, you're hugging your mom. The emotion, okay. And maybe that game meant a lot more than games in the past. Fine. It pretty much ends any hope of a Heisman national championship. But there are 32 GMs in the NFL who are watching this and then listening to this. And the first thing they might be saying is, this kid's soft. This kid doesn't know how to handle losing. This kid, toughen him up. And I'm not saying he's not a tough kid. All I'm saying is I hear something like that, and I love emotion. I'm all for it. I love the passion, but I know how GMs think. And the last thing they want to do is make a mistake when it comes to a quarterback, and they vet. And if they even sniff or see or feel there's a red flag with something that comes out of their mouth, that is a check. Now, am I being overly critical? Am I being paranoid here as a Giants fan, or is this much to do about nothing? Or is there something to be said about this?
No, as we move into the draft process, they're going to start, slinging arrows. You know what I mean? And they're going to ding a guy for this and that. And as you said, they're going to want to interview him. And when it comes to combine, I know the interviews are not as hard as they used to be, but they're going to want to know who really is Caleb Williams, what makes him tick. And we're already seeing on some sites that Greg May from North Carolina has moved ahead of him as a possible #1 pick. And a lot of questions out there, Q. So yeah, it was not a good look. You would hope he would take into the locker room and kind of uh, vetted out his situation there. But I think he is just a great talent. Somebody's going to take an opportunity on him,
He's a
and
great quarterback.
hopefully, hopefully it ends up like Jalen Carter last year. There were so many red flags, and the Eagles said, "Nope, this is our guy. We don't care. We're going to take him." And he's been a cornerstone of that defense this season. So interesting thing to watch as we move towards the draft. Now, Q, what would you do if the Giants selected Shador Sanders, Dion's son, as the quarterback?
It's funny you actually brought that up. I had a thought today that for some reason it crossed in my mind that there's also talk maybe like Arch Manning, right? Or a kid like Bo Nix. Sanders is a junior, senior.
He's a junior, so he has a little bit more eligibility. They say he may go back, but I think he's going to come to the NFL this season.
Man, here's the problem is that, and I'd be sounding like a hypocrite. I said this years ago on the radio with you. I know there's this thought where you just draft a quarterback until you get it right. And I used Washington and Cleveland as these examples. But I am also not the biggest proponent of that, because every time you swing and you miss, it's setting your franchise back 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And it snowballs. That's why Washington still doesn't have a franchise quarterback. That's why Cleveland doesn't have a franchise quarterback. They don't. Deshaun Watson is not a franchise quarterback. Tampa dealt with it. The Jets dealt with it. The Giants were spoiled because they had Eli for 15, 16 plus years, but they also prior to had to bridge. They went from the Canals to the Browns to the Grahams, to the Warners, or to the Collins to the Warner, then to Eli. Everything is purely speculation. In a perfect world, I would have loved to saw Daniel Jones healthy and an offensive line keep the kid upright and have him perform. And even if Daniel Jones played 17 games this year and he was healthy and they didn't lose anyone and the offensive line kept him upright, if Daniel Jones and the Giants won 6 games, but he threw 35 touchdown passes and 6 or 7 picks and added another 4 or 5 rushing yards and had 35 to 40 total touchdowns, and their defense maybe collapsed here and there, I would say Daniel Jones is the guy. But now everything's in flux because he can't stay healthy, which I get worried when I look at a kid like Sanders, who, size-wise, wants to run first and foremost, athletic. The kid can play, man. Don't get me wrong. Williams can play. Don't get me wrong. The kid, what's his name? Drake May, the kid out of Carolina, correct?
Yes.
Can play. Bo Nix can play.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm so hesitant right now because Daniel Jones was such a reach. And all we talked about was the size, the athleticism, was the arm strength, was the scrambling ability, throws a pretty ball. But yet it never resonated. He never was able to put it together except for one season, for which he played well and which he cashed in. But now it's as though we're back to square one. Listen, I'm petrified of whoever they draft, because if they don't fix the offensive line, then this team is going to be bad for the next 5, 6, 7 years. That's the problem. Like chicken or the egg. What do you do?
Yeah, to me, you don't want your franchise in that quarterback abyss where you got these guys.
But then what do you do?
That
Do
are
you not draft one
you
of those guys? Do you not draft one of those
draft.
quarterbacks?
And this is the new NFL, and you got to have that good young quarterback. So I would say yes, draft a young quarterback and then see what you have from there. We see too often where teams are trying retread guys. Look at the Colts ever since Andrew Luck left. They tried guy after guy after guy, and
Rivers,
then
Ryan,
they said, you know what,
Wentz.
enough's enough. Let's go Richardson route and see from there, because most of these older guys, once they hit their second franchise, they're not going to do much. And then we talk about Russell Wilson over and over again on this, on our talks, and
yeah.
Look at him. He's a prime example. His second franchise, he's just not the same guy. And typically most of those quarterbacks aren't. So why not go get the young guy? It's unfortunate, but the Giants paid Jones all that money, and they're going to have to eat some of it, or just have him sit on the bench. It's just crazy. It's an albatross that they're stuck with.
I mean, listen, and then you got these teams that just have had stout offensive lines for a decade. I mean, you need an offensive line, man, but I get what you're saying. It's the new NFL, generational talent. You can't pass on these guys. But then again, it's almost like, what good is it if, you go into the dealership and you see this gorgeous Jag and Mercedes? That's all well and good, but have you even checked the hood yet? I mean, look at the engine, see what you're working with here. It's great to have one of these guys under center, no doubt, because they're all talented. They all look to be very good or great quarterbacks going forward. But man, you got to protect them. You have to. It was inevitable this kid was going to get hurt. Now I get it, non-contact, but he's already dealt with the neck injuries. He's been banged up. It's just, I mean, it's just get me to friggin' April. Oh my God. It's just, and I'll tell you what's going to be worse. If St. John stinks this year, which I don't think they will, if the Knicks stink this year, which I think they'll be an average team, what the hell am I even getting up for?
Gotta hang your hat on your Cincinnati, Detroit Super Bowl.
Well, cash
There's
that
two
ticket, baby.
teams for you to root for.
Yeah,
And you can
I
just
have to.
pound your chest when they play each other
Hey,
in
listen,
Vegas.
we had the bold prediction on BYP. So, all right, he of course is Lloyd Vance at Lloyd Vance, and of course host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 102.9 The Game in Florida and Broad Street South Network. You can hear him tonight live at 8 p.m. He'll have his Philly brother and OJ Spivey checking in, talking some Eagles. I'm sure you guys will go around the league, that Dallas and Eagles rivalry, and breaking down the game. And then Lloyd will be back here late in the week when we preview the upcoming slate of games as well. And obviously we'll recap Thursday night and Monday night alike. My friend, always appreciate you jumping on BYP, pal. Thank you.
All right, Q. Thanks for having me on.